It's Thursday night. It's 8 p.m. It's time for your Big Gold Belt Wrestling podcast, and we have so much to get into tonight. Let me tell you, we're going to talk about MJF returning to AEW and how that changes the landscape. We got to talk about NXT Battleground going down this weekend, and we got to follow up on last week, all the talk about Jordynne Grace, because she has now hit the ring in Orlando, and we got some thoughts on that. All that and more coming up. Stay with us, folks, and buckle in. Your Big Gold Belt Wrestling podcast starts right now.
Big Gold Belt, 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 Big Gold Belt. All I really want is that Big Gold Belt, 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 Big Gold Belt. All I really need that Big Gold Belt.
Thanks for tuning in, folks. It's your Big Gold Belt Wrestling podcast here tonight, Thursday nights, 8 p.m., streaming live as we do each and every week. Glad you're here. I am Will in the center of the screen. I got Damian G down in the Lone Star State to my left and the Giant Crab Jamal to my right. Gentlemen, how is it going this evening?
It's hot. It's 93 and it's not even July yet. So yeah, it's hot.
Is it humid though down here? Because we got the humidity up here starting to.
No, not yet, but it's coming.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, well,
okay.
I will trade that heat for the humidity, and it is soup out there. That's what the weather report is. It is soup.
Yeah.
So.
The DC summer is descending upon us, and it's not fun because the humidity always sucks.
And summer doesn't start for like another 3 weeks.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like it, though. It might as well already be here. That is how it be. So, we got a lot to get into tonight. I think this is going to be a fast-moving show, so we might as well get right to it. So, MJF has returned to AEW, and with that, shut down a whole lot of speculation about what exactly he's going to be doing, because we've had, the bidding war of 24, teased for, ever, and with his return, he has shut that down and said, damn it, I'm not going anywhere. I'm here to stay and all this. So we didn't get into it last week because we were so busy with all the NXT talk and everything going on with TNA and Impact. I mean, TNA and NXT, my bad.
I know. It takes a while to get used to it. I know.
I know. We decided the name changes, man. They keep coming. So yeah, we didn't get into it last week, but MJF opened Dynamite last night. Kind of staked his claim again. Now, look, I am back. I'm planting my flag in the center of the ring. And I guess, I don't know. Damian, what are your thoughts on this? Now that he's back and he's built his character on this whole idea that he might be going somewhere. He's, going to do whatever he wants. And that's gone now. So kind of changes things.
It does. And for me, it seems as if it's going to be a shot in the arm, especially for the men's division in AEW, almost to the point where I feel like it cuts the knees out from under Shane Strickland or even Will Ospreay. Because let's be real here, before he got hurt, MJF was him and Moxley and maybe one other person was carrying the men's division in AEW for a long time. The whole thing with Adam Cole and him, the whole thing with him and Jericho, MJF's rise was not, let's say, meteoric, as some people might have you to believe. But now that he's back, it's very interesting now that they have him going after Adam Cole because, again, Swerve and Ospreay, and they even did a photo shoot, those two. That's all over social media to just remind y'all the new age of AEW. But hello, you're forgetting that MJF is 28. Oh yeah, and by the way, there's still Okada. So you would think on paper, this sounds great. But then MJF's back. I honestly think it helps in terms of draw for people who are real hardcore AEW fans or people who just love MJF. But I think long-term, Tony's got some booking problems ahead of him. That's why I think this thing with Adam Cole's going to be dragged out a little bit longer. Obviously, because Cole's still hurt, but he'll make his way through the Kingdom and Undisputed Kingdom and all that jazz. But I'm very curious to see how the next 2 to 3 months shape up, only because does MJF take the title right away to get back what was never lost? So I'm looking forward to seeing that. But welcome back regardless.
I think the biggest thing about Friedman's return isn't necessarily where he's going to go. It's more about who gets bumped to make room for him.
Correct.
Right.
Now you have Swerve, you have Osprey. Eventually, Copeland is going to come back. Eventually, Brian says he wants a title shot, and so insert him as the top of the card there. Moxley's off playing have a New Japan adventure, so that'll keep him preoccupied during the summer. But then what? And then we haven't even mentioned Adam Page. When does he come back?
Mm-hmm.
Where does he fit in? Is there anyone else? Where's Ricky Starks? Does he fit in at the top of the card? I think he should, but we haven't seen hot nor hair of him. So it's not a matter of whether or not AEW's roster is full, but in this one particular spot at the top for this one title, top of the card, that is a very thin perched position to be in. So it's going to be interesting to see who gets what and who gets moved and how that shakes out. And also, it will be interesting to see what revisionist history takes place because, was that at not Forbidden Door? What's the Double or Nothing?
Going on.
Where Friedman stood up the crowd for a signing, didn't come, the contract, the bitching, the moaning, and all that good stuff too. So does that get thrown out? Like, oh well, no, it's all good because he's re-signed another contract. Does that? I think that's really was an interesting part of the type of person that he could be, but it is still kind of like, well, is this still the person that you're going to hitch your wagon to? Mm-hmm. And then also with the Forbidden Door and stuff like that, because that's coming up at the end of this month.
June 30th.
Right.
Oh, wow. That's quick. Mm-hmm.
So that's going to happen on Long Island at the at UBS, which is a hometown crowd for Friedman as well. So does he just get hot-shotted into a title picture, almost immediately? What presence will he have at that show? Considering that, it's going to be interesting. It's just going to be interesting to see if they had a plan without him and whether or not they've scrapped that plan to fit him in.
Okay, I got to throw this in right away because this is interesting to me right here. So Wadelson on Trich here. Wadelson 3. I feel like he added to what AEW is missing. Swerve with the championship just ain't hitting. So what's jumping out at me here, it feels like Swerve just got that darn belt. I mean, I guess it's only been one show since he's, gotten it. We had the title defense at Double or Nothing, but I mean, it was Dynasty that he won, right? Am I remembering this right?
Yeah, it was at Dynasty. He beat Joe. Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it was just in April. So here we are in June.
46 days, sir.
It hasn't even been a full 2 months. And we're already not feeling Swerve? That's where we're at already?
Well, then I guess the question is, wait, let us know. What is it about it that it's not hitting? Like, what is Swerve missing that would make him a better champion? I know what my answer is because I agree that he's missing something. And I agree that his character, I'm kind of on the fence of what this character is. Is he the mogul, Rick Ross, Dr. Dre, Andre the Harrell type of thing? Or is he just this one-man wrecking crew that doesn't need anything or anybody and he's just going to take whatever he wants and Prince Nana's dancing happily in the background? He's already shed the rest of his compadres with Khan and Cage and those guys, and he is kind of going it alone, which makes sense. I'm sick of these half-ass tag teams just coming through, and now we're stable for no reason. But he is missing that thing that would make him a better champion, and I also think that is synergy. He says he's a mogul. I want to see him everywhere, and of course AEW doesn't do that, and we talked about that ad nauseum. With that said, though, with Friedman, the problem AEW had, their Achilles heel is they can't book champions for shit.
That's always been the issue.
That's always been the thing. It's always been about the chase and never about the actuality of winning it. So it does, fair enough. He has personal reasons, but he feels like it's forced. It doesn't feel organic. Wade says, okay, cool. Understandable. But I also think that it was because Swerve in particular filled a void. Yes. When you think about who they didn't have, Adam Page. Moxley's doing other stuff. Nobody wants Jericho anymore. Cole doesn't have 2 legs to stand on. Nobody gives a shit about Roderick Strong. Ricky Starks is in the Shadow Realm. What like, who else? Where is Keith Lee? I think he's in the Shadow Realm with Starks. And then of course there's guys that have potential that we would have want to come up, but then again, that never happened. So Takeshita's not in the heavyweight title picture. Wardlow never made it. Hobbs never made it. So it was Swerve by default. A bunch of guys stepped back and Swerve looked behind him and went, "Oh, I guess it's me." And cool. No problem with it. I just wish his title reign so far felt bigger than it is. Go ahead, Damien.
So my question, while we've been discussing it, and I've thought this for a long time, I just never voiced it. If you take away Nana, can he go back to being that maniacal dude that tried to kill Billy Gunn in a back alley, tied him up and whatnot, and make him one of those, like you said, like a fierce, take everybody on by hook or by crook, doesn't matter if you're heel or face?
Not in 2 months. That takes years to build.
So then my issue is, and I'm going to ask this, was he over just because of Nana's dance?
Yes.
Fuck.
That didn't hurt. That certainly didn't hurt, that catching fire.
No, well, okay. The long and short of it is Nana's dance plus the one match with Adam Page.
Yes. Okay.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Got them over. So,
and I think back when he had that feud with Page, they had him breaking into his house and stuff. I mean, they were presenting him with a lot more edge at that point.
Right. So that's kind of the thing. They have a bunch of guys that could be champion, but nobody seems to want it. Yeah. It doesn't seem like a hot commodity. It seems like this is their turn.
Here's something that occurs to me thinking about times I've seen this in the past in different companies where just, a baby face finally gets to the title and then it just collapses. There's just nothing there. A lot of the time, the issue when that happens is they just don't have the right challengers in place to make it interesting once they get the title. Is that the issue? The challengers they presented just for Swerve just ain't it.
Which is why I say that you can't build that Batman villain-like level of terror in 2 months. And that's why that match with Adam Page, that one time that they had that match, got him over and pushed him up to the next level. Okay, this guy looks like a champion right now based on what that was. And now that they've taken almost everything that made him interesting, the goons that he had with him, Nana's out there doing his thing, but Nana has merch. So it's it's becoming a Bobby Roode type of a thing where are you over or is it the song? Is it, are they cheering for Swerve?
That's a good comparison, though. That's a very valid comparison. I would make the same.
The entrance was over, but once the bell rang, it's whatever.
Yeah. And that's kind of the thing. That's that bait and switch. And, Ellison had the point where Khan is trying to sell us this Salisbury steak and pass it off as filet mignon. And the truth is that that's kind of how he's gotten over the past 5 years. It's all been sold on ideology. And it's the ideology that this person was good here. Now, where did they get here where they can do whatever? And not everybody's that type of creative. So Ellison says, hey, they have challenges for him, but he's not being spotlighted. I can think of 5 wrestlers. That is also true.
Give me your 5, Wade.
Yeah, but Khan really just kind of leans on his people, which is why we've only seen the people that we've seen as champions when they have a hideously talented roster, where anybody could be champion, and yet only a handful ever thought about being so. So I honestly don't think that Swerve was destined to be champion in this way, but because of the lack of viable, personnel and the match with Adam Page, they gave him the ball.
Yeah. And I think there's nothing wrong with that. Sorry, Will, really quick. There's nothing wrong with that, hey, they gave him the ball. We saw if he can run with it. And that's that. There's no shame in being a transitional champion. Right. I wonder how much of it is they need to keep the belt on him to justify the switch. But for me, it's, what? He doesn't need it because it was more interesting when he didn't have the belt, when he was just going out, putting on matches, drinking blood and dancing with Nana, what have you. But if he drops the title at the next pay-per-view, would we really be surprised? Because I wouldn't. I would pull the plug. I would.
That's
say
what I was gonna. That's what I was gonna bring
well,
up. So if Forbidden Door in Long Island, you think they run Swerve versus MJF and they just go right back to that immediately, like all of 2 months into the title run.
Well, I mean, they would be interesting since they've already have Swerve and Ospreay scheduled for Forbidden Door.
Oh, my bad. Right, I'm totally blanking here.
But you know,
that's
cards.
What if they give it Ospreay? Yeah. I wouldn't mind that.
But that's the thing that AEW kind of does is that the WWE has a plan. The plan is ironclad, and they would stick with it no matter what. This is not what the crowd wants. They don't give a shit. This is the plan. They're going to see it through. Okay, cool. AEW has a plan. The plan, maybe 50-50, but the crowd has a stronger reaction this way. Okay, let's go that way. Don't let fans book the show.
No.
So yes, the hot commodity is Ospreay to be champion, but realistically, we'll be saying the same thing in 2 months. Why is Ospreay here? Do we have a reason to believe that Ospreay was a viable replacement for Swerve? What has he done for me lately? Wade Ellison says he drops to Ospreay and we get Brian Ospreay all in. I think that was going to happen anyway.
It seems really fast to go to make an Ospreay champ, but it also wouldn't shock me. I don't know.
And isn't he already Intercontinental champion?
Yeah, he is the international title.
Yeah, so Ospreay with 2 belts, Monet with 2 belts. These are the things that can happen, but they're hedging their bets and hoping that these things have to hit out of the park. And I'm not entirely sure. Now, the question is, let's say Swerve loses.
Right.
Then what?
Might be our guy Wade here. Wade's giving us all the scoops tonight. He's saying feuds with Page after he screws him out of the title. Cowboy is noticeable by his absence.
Right. But that's also kind of where, I think Adam Page needs a restart. They had that match. It was 1 of 1. You can't recreate that. That's like asking Austin and Bret Hart to go back to WrestleMania 13.
WrestleMania 13. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You're not going to get that again. That was it. So I think Adam Page needs to restart. He needs to, the climb, go get to the back of the line, start the grind again. See you at Full Gear, maybe.
What about Swerve versus Okada if he drops the belt? Still keeps him in a title contention. It may not be the main one, but he'd still be in a title contention.
Yeah. I mean, that is a thing, and I don't mind it. But it's just that there seems to be not a lot of consistency in AEW, where not that we have to know each and everything planned out for the next 6 months, the way people love the fantasy book, but it's just that if you think about it for a second, is there anything down the line that could potentially be something that's must see? Whatever Brian's situation is, his knowing that he can leave sometime within the next 6 to 8 months and be done with wrestling makes whatever he does important.
Agreed.
By default. So that's not necessarily his storyline. It's the fact that we don't know how long we have with him. Same thing with Copeland. Same thing with Jericho, if you're a fan. We know that the clock is ticking and the elephant is in the room. And it is what it is. But with people that we expect, Friedman, Swerve, Page, is what they're doing that much more important? And I think, of course, Friedman has the recency bias of, he's been gone for so long. Kenny Omega, he's been gone for so long. Okay, cool. But realistically, I'm not particularly excited with the current top of the card. I mean, actually at Forbidden Door of the matches that they announced right now, I think the Monet match is going to be the most interesting, but then the TNT ladder match is interesting. Swerve versus Ospreay is fine, but personally, those are the 2 matches I'm looking forward to.
And what happened the last show? We were most interested in what was going to happen with Willow and Monet. So it's kind of repeating itself. What's going on there?
Yeah, I mean, it just seems that the top of the card is really flat right now, which is a product of interesting booking. I don't want to say bad because it's not been bad. It's just not been hitting the way that it needs to. Especially with the fact that better competition is coming through.
Correct.
All right. We want to switch gears here?
Yeah, sure.
I mean, speaking of ladder matches.
Yeah, exactly. Let's switch gears because hell, we got shows this weekend. So Sunday, NXT Battleground, which we kind of got into a little bit of last week, but now we got a full card. So when this show was first announced, I was kind of whatever. The most interesting thing to me about it when it was first announced was the idea that it's happening at the UFC Apex in Vegas. And it's the first like kind of crossover thing where they're like doing something in the UFC venue there, kind of UFC's version of the Performance Center that they got in Vegas. And they're going to run the show there, small, intimate venue, practically like they're running, where they do the NXT tapings at the Performance Center. Same kind of deal where it's going to be a very small setup that they have on Sunday. But as we got into last week, everything went sideways last week on NXT. And now there's a lot on this show that's got my attention. So to set the table here, let me pull it up real quick. All right. So main event, Trick Williams defends the NXT championship against Ethan Page. We have the NXT tag titles, Nathan Frazier and Axiom against Luke Gallows and Carl Anderson. NXT Underground. This one I'm curious about. Shayna Baszler versus Lola Vice. Of course, the NXT Women's Championship. Roxanne Perez versus the Impact Knockouts champion Jordynne Grace. I did it again. TNA. TNA, not Impact.
Force of habit.
Triple threat for the North American Championship. Obafemi versus Wesley and Joe Coffey. And then the ladder match for the inaugural NXT Women's North American Championship with Sol Ruka, Lash Legend, Fallon Henley, Jada Parker, Mi Shin, and Kalani Jordan. A lot going on this show. So, Damian, you get in here first.
So I'm looking
out at you, man. This is
because I'm looking at the ladder match right now, the women's ladder match, and I'm looking at the way it's constructed. So we have Kalani Jordan and Sol Ruka are the highlight film athletes that you've seen on NXT previously, in those beat the clock matches or what have you. So they'll be there to do spots, right? You got Michin, Mia Yim, who is the veteran that can hold everything together just in case people get a little out of control, out of their element. She can pace the match, slow people down.
Direct traffic.
Exactly. So now we're left with Lash Legend, Fallon Henley, who just turned heel, and Jada Parker, who cut an interesting promo against Mia this past week. So with the metaphor and Lash and Trick, I can kind of see that not being for her because of all that's been happening with the metaphor and with Trick Williams.
Mm-hmm.
I see it being Fallon Henley just because she was the most over part of the Briggs and whoever tag team, right?
Right.
And now she turned heel and she has her own version of the women's right. So that's the one that's looking out to me right now. Because Jada Parker, I can see it. I know people want it, especially, young men 18 to 34.
Feels too soon.
It's too soon. So I'm really intrigued by how this ladder match is going to go. It could be a complete train wreck in all the worst ways possible. Botches galore, the ladders break, nobody knows their spots. Or it could be poetry in motion. So I'm looking forward to that. The last thing I'll talk on, and I'll throw it over to Will, because I want his feedback on this underground match. Okay. Trick. Ethan Page. What does that say about your men's roster when a guy who just showed up randomly from AEW, the abyss of AEW, is like, hey guys, I won a championship. Okay, here you go. It's like, are you kidding me? Like, you just jumped the line because there's nobody aside from Obafemi, in my opinion, that could have stood up as a champion, the main champion, not even the North American champion. So that just goes to show how, as much as everyone says HBK is cooking, he's not cooking in the men's main event division after Mello went up and Braun went up and Elio went up. So now we got to fill those gaps.
You're not feeling Ethan Page in the role.
Ethan Page. Go ahead, Will.
All right. NXT Underground. What they did recently with Lola Vice and Natalia, right? That's the one they had recently where they took the ropes down. They did that. They did it in the Performance Center. That went pretty damn good. I think it leans into Lola Vice's strengths as like, ex-MMA that, can be okay, kind of lay in some strikes, make it look good. And, we know Shayna will go for that. So they got her against the right person that can make that match work. Natalya could do that kind of grappling, so it was a good pairing. Shayna will work just as good in the same way. Now, I think we mentioned it last week, maybe in passing, the idea that, hey, maybe they would try and throw this in, since they're in the Apex, throw this in the Octagon. What I was hearing today is logistically, it probably can't happen unless they'd have to set it up somewhere else because the place is pretty small. And I don't think there's enough room to have the straight up regular ring and then the full on Octagon, unless you have like nobody in that damn building. That would be like all your space essentially, trying to have those two structures in there. So I don't think it's going to happen in the Octagon. Would be interesting as hell if it did though, with all, your cross synergy TKO branding. But Shayna and Lola Vice, I think that should be a hell of a match. And I think the other key to is keep it short. This should be like a 5-6 minute, explosive. Tops. Keep it short and sweet, in and out. Have them do their thing. Make Lola, keep building Lola Vice up as like, the hot young star they're trying to make into like something, and they got stuff they could do there. Crab, get in here. What on this show is standing out to you?
The tag match is probably the one that I'm looking forward to the most, largely because of the fact that it's the OC. Mm-hmm. It'll be interesting to see how it's another styles clash. To high flying tag team versus the veterans Gallo and Anderson. I think that one could be the most fun. The ladder match is going to be a shit show regardless because it's a ladder match.
Car crash TV.
Right. And that's fine. Triple threat matches is fine. Obviously Roxanne versus Jordynne Grace has so many implications, and that's actually the question I'm going to ask you in a second. But
yeah, we'll talk about that one separate.
Yes, so much implications on what that means. A lot of the questions about that match in general. But if I had to pick one out of the 6, and again, another tight show, 6 matches. Each match is presented a little bit differently. Every single match has is for a championship. So, except the NXT Underground match, which is something totally different. So it is an interesting thing that the way this show is paced. It should be a hell of a show, and it's this weekend. Now, as far as the NXT thing happening at the UFC Apex, what does that mean? Now, I don't watch mixed martial arts at all. I don't follow the UFC and anything. What role will they play in this show, having that there? Is it going to be like that? What was that UFC show that was like Hard Knocks, where they took fighters, the Ultimate Fighter?
Yeah.
Is it going to be like that type of a setting? How will they dress it up? Is this will this affect the UFC presentation at all? And they become more WWE like? Will WWE, become more UFC like? Is this the litmus test for something bigger down the road? And I don't know the answer to that, but it is going to be interesting to see it play out there of all places, because there's a ton of venues in Vegas that they could have run, and yet they're doing it at the UFC Apex. So that's the whole thing. But
given the interest in this card, they could have had this in a much larger building, and now suddenly it's like, oh, there's like maybe 600 tickets for this entire thing.
Right.
So there we go.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it'd be cool to see how all of those things play out, but I guess we'll definitely have to talk about the elephant in the room, and that's Roxanne Perez versus Jordynne Grace. And the question that I got to ask you guys is, what's the main event?
Yeah, good question. Okay, this is what we're gonna do. Let me get Adrian in here real quick. Adrian Arco says Shayna deserved better after Ronda. I hope her Lola can cook. I agree, because I forgot that Shayna and Ronda tried to do the same type of thing, and it didn't work out. They had to do it in the regular ring, and just fans weren't buying it. So this is kind of Shayna's chance for redemption in a shoot-style environment, doing this on NXT. So if it's going to work anywhere, I think this is where it's going to work. So here's what we're going to do. It's halftime. Let's do our halftime break. We're going to get that in. We come back. We'll hit the indie spotlight. We come out of the indie spotlight, and then let's talk Roxanne and Jordynne Grace, because we spent so much time on that last week. We'll get that one in there. That's the deal, folks. And then some more stuff in the second half. We got a whole second half of the show coming. Stay with us, folks. Your Big Old Belt Wrestling Podcast. We'll be back right after this.
A little birdie told me, everybody, that you may be interested in doing some sponsorship and advertising opportunities with us here at Big Gold Belt Media. You know what? You might as well, because we are the golden standard for all of your media needs. Why would you want to go anywhere else? Besides, all of your pre-roll ads, your mid-roll ads, as well as your on-air reads are going to be done by me, Damian G. Yeah, professional broadcaster, Damian G. We do all types of social media promotions. That means your podcast, your IG, your Facebook, your Twitter, and your business website all get shouted out on our network here at Big Gold Belt Media, where we cover wrestling, movies, comics, and more. And you can find out more information and make those inquiries, kids, because limited time offer here at biggoldbeltgroup@gmail.com. Again, that is biggoldbeltgroup@gmail.com. Why would you want to go anywhere else? I wouldn't. Well, I work here, but I still wouldn't even if I didn't. So again, Big Gold Belt Media for all your sponsorship and advertising opportunities, your podcast, your IG, your Facebook, your Twitter, all of your social media platforms, as well as any business website you want us to promote on our show. biggoldbeltgroup@gmail.com, and let them know Damon G sent you.
All right, folks, we are in our second half, and when we join our second half, we like to kick things off with seeing what's going on in the indies. So here's Giant Grab with this week's Big Gold Belt Indie Wrestling Spotlight.
And this week, we're going out to a small town halfway between Chicago and the Quad Cities called LaSalle, Illinois. And there's a show out there at the Knights of Columbus called No Escape from Dreamwave Wrestling. If you're out there and, a couple hours from Chicago, a couple hours from Quad Cities, Moline and all that, No Escape. And it's happening Saturday, June 15th, next Saturday, from the Knights of Columbus. That's 209 Gooden Street in LaSalle, Illinois. The pre-show meet and greets at 4, and the show starts. Main doors open at 5. Bell time is at 6. And one thing that drew me to this is that on the flyer, they actually put the expected show duration. It's 3 hours.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah. So that's a good look when they're telling you when you're able to get in and get out. A couple matches that I'm looking forward to seeing is Channing Thomas versus Bobby Orlando. The main event versus Bang and Matthews. I love the main event. If you haven't seen them, good Lord. Brooke Havoc versus Jessica Scott. So Christian Rhodes versus Gringo Loco in their world title match. So it's a Dreamwave, No Escape out there in LaSalle, Illinois, between the Quad Cities and Chicago. From the Knights of Columbus, 209 Gooden Street. That's in LaSalle, Illinois. 4 o'clock, meet and greet. Main door open at 5. Bell time is at 6 o'clock, all times local. You can get your tickets at dreamwavewrestling.com/next event. Dreamwavewrestling.com. And that's the Indie Spotlight for this week.
Nice. Awesome, folks. It's going to be a packed weekend. Lots of wrestling going on as we head into summer. So let's get right back to what we were talking about before halftime. The match that we spent a lot of time talking about last week, this weekend at NXT Battleground on Sunday, it's Roxanne Perez defending the NXT Women's Championship against the TNA Knockouts champion, Jordynne Grace. Worlds colliding here. Stuff like all kinds of crazy stuff.
That's trademarked already.
There you go, man. Well, they did their crossover event before with that. So if anyone's going to use Worlds Collide, it can be NXT. So I think Jamal had the perfect question to kind of kick this discussion off here. What main events this show? Should it be the women's title with all the interest going into this, or should it, I guess, probably be the Ethan Page and Trick Williams match? I mean, my gut reaction is, I think the most sizzle on this show is Jordynne and Roxanne. Mm-hmm. So if I'm saying it tonight, I say go with that. I think that's where all the interest is, from what I'm seeing.
Yeah, I would say the same thing, and it's Trick Williams versus Ethan Page. Yeah. It is a match that doesn't feel like a main event match. Maybe because of the surprise of it all. Maybe because what Damon, what you said, Ethan Page is coming in, jumping the line and getting a title match. I don't think Ethan Page is that guy that makes me want to see that match. But either way, there's been actual build between Roxanne Perez and Jordynne Grace. it's something to look forward to. And the fact that it's for the NXT Women's Championship, the fact that Jordynne Grace could walk out of, I was going to say Full Sail, but walk out of the Apex with 2 belts and take it back to Impact is, bananas. That's a possibility in 2024. So just for all of the implications, known and unknown, I don't know how you don't end the show with Roxanne Perez and Jordynne Grace.
I will say, yes, that's the obvious choice. But another one I'd put, being that he was so over before he got injured, I would put Wesley, the triple threat, Wesley, Obafemi, only because I don't like the coffees. I never have, going back to NXT UK. But Obafemi and Wesley are capable of being in a main event right now. So as a curveball, if you don't want to put Trick versus Paige as the main event, if you plan on taking this belt off of Obafemi and putting it on Wesley, the regular NXT crowd folk will be ecstatic if they go and show up and drive out there. That would, for me, be the better men's match if you want to use a men's match to be in that slot. But with as much investment as we did with Jordynne Grace to appear on NXT television the last 2 weeks and now at a pay-per-view or a premium live event, yeah, it's a no-brainer. That has to be the main event. But to what we're saying, do you let Jordynne walk out with the championship? Because Roxanne doesn't really need it. She didn't need it the second time that she got it. It was just to test out the heel, like the whiny heel character that apparently Cora Jade was supposed to be, and now Roxanne took it over. So I would be interested to see if that happens. Because then who jumps ship over from NXT to go over to TNA if it's not Roxanne, if Jordynne does win that title?
I got Wade jumping in with, I love Jordynne, but Rox needs to retain with heel-ass tactics. I want that match to go 20 minutes.
I think it's going to go 20 regardless.
Yeah, it's going 20 regardless.
It's going to get time. It's going to get time for sure. I liked what, now here's something we didn't talk about. So they had Jordynne's debut NXT match this week on TV. Hell, opened the show with it.
Yeah.
And everything. What I liked about how they handled her debut match was they didn't do no 50-50 give and take. Oh, we're going to try to make both people look good. This was the Jordynne Grace showcase where it was like, you're going to come out, you're going to look like $1 million. You're going to eat this girl up. You're going to hit your finish, 1, 2, 3, and it's done. I thought it was perfect. It was exactly what it needed to be. Compared to, like, some of these other matches we're seeing, like, we're all debut people, and it's like, no, they got to have like a 50-50, like 15-minute battle. It was like, oh no, this is all about one thing, making Jordynne Grace look like $1 million in preparation for Battleground. I thought they nailed that perfectly this past week. Now,
that's the way to go.
Yeah. Now, here's the other interesting little thing they did on NXT. They had the segment in the back with Jordynne Grace kind of bumping into a bunch of the other ladies on the roster, interacting with people. They made a point at the end of it to have her bump into Tatum Paxley and Tatum take an interest in the Impact. I did again, the TNA Knockouts Championship. She took an interest. And I guess there's talk that there's going to be an open challenge on the other side on Impact. So does Tatum Paxley go down to the Impact Zone to show up and try to get that belt as like the other half of this deal? Or is Jordynne taking the belt? I mean, we asked this last week. Is Jordynne going to take the belt back to the Impact Zone? Or is she just going to go back and have made her little appearance and that's it and Roxanne retains? I'm not sure. I'm really not sure
at this point. I want to say it's not going to happen, but we've seen crazier things happen in professional wrestling.
Yeah,
so
I think they can
be on that list.
I think they can go either way with it, and it'll be fine.
Mm-hmm.
I think for everything they've invested so far and how it's working, that's the key thing. It's totally cooking. Everyone's into it. Like I've seen anyone be like, "Oh, this is stupid. Why are they wasting our time with this TNA stuff?" People are eating it up. So my thought is, hell, give her a little run with the belt. Have her take the belt down there, and it doesn't have to be any long thing. It can only be like a month or two. But hell, we're starting the summer. Let's shake things up. Let's do something we never seen before. Give Jordynne a run with the NXT title.
Also, you bring up a good point where we don't really need the women's title for the summer to start because we have this new North American women's title that we want to get off the ground, and we're putting it in a ladder match. So temporarily, that could be the top title on the brand while it's over at TNA. I really just want to know, and maybe you guys know and I don't, what's in it for TNA? Like, what are they getting?
This.
Exposure.
Aside from this.
No, I mean, that's all they have, though. That's the only leverage that they have.
It's just Jordynne Grace. That's all we got.
Well, who else? If it wasn't Jordynne Grace, then who else would be up there? I mean, they can't. They don't really have anyone else to send up there. Jordynne Grace is the woman that represents the brand, men or women.
The Knockouts have always represented the brand for the last couple of years.
So there's that. And what does NXT? What does TNA get out of it? The fact that their literal champion could, in all fairness, should main event a WWE pay-per-view. Full stop. That is worth something. Now, whether she wins or not, maybe she should. There's obviously going to be cases on both sides for either to happen. But this is literally the thing that TNA has been missing for years without a TV deal. Barring massive, exposure and a marketing campaign, shorter than Catholicism, they would need something that big to come in and sweep the country. I don't see that happening. This is the next best thing. They got their people on TV. They got Trick Williams doing interviews saying, well, Jordynne Grace came through. Could anybody else from TNA come through? It's like, yeah, send them. Send them all. They have people talking about both brands in a meaningful way because they're low-key doing something that hasn't happened in a very long time. I like it. I think that this is what it is. Now, if Jordynne Grace loses, does the experiment end then and there? There's no reason for them to play with each other anymore. There's no reason for, Roxanne to go into TNA and demand a shot where you tried to take my title, I'm going to try to take yours. But she's a heel. She's a chicken shit heel. Why would she do that? So for that reason, I think Jordynne should win, hold the belt until Heat Wave, which is 4th of July weekend up in Toronto. That's a good month. That's a good month. Hell, it's a month. July 7th is the date for Heat Wave. It won't really, which is Money in the Bank weekend. It will be a moment. It doesn't have anything to do with what's happening this fall when NXT moves to network television. And it will be a good small sample size of what synergy would look like between WWE and another company in a major way. So I think I would be down for a month-long experiment with this.
Yeah.
Would this be a better? Go ahead. Well, sorry.
No, go ahead, Damien. You go first.
Overall, would this be a better experiment than what New Japan and AEW tried to do with Forbidden Door when they started that? Is this a better experiment when Kenny was the belt collector, as opposed to, I should say?
Yes, because with Kenny being the belt collector, it was focused on him. With Jordynne being the Knockouts champion, even if it's focused on the Knockouts division, it's still bigger than her.
Yes. So
the question was with AEW, who should walk through the Forbidden Door next? And we realized that, that ain't gonna happen. Now the question is with NXT is, where do we go from here? We don't want this party to end. Yeah, it's a totally different feeling. And then we get Kenny versus Rich Swann, and it's like, okay.
Oh, I remember that.
Yeah, that happened.
I do like Wade mentioning in the chat Josh Alexander versus Obafemi. I do like the thought of that.
There's definitely more stuff they could do with it. I think the big question is if it expands beyond the women. I think a key part of why they wanted Jordynne Grace is Jordynne Grace hasn't ever been seen anywhere on a national level. So it was a fresh face to bring up that's like, okay, this isn't someone you've seen, before in WWE who came and left, or someone that was in NXT before, or someone that was on AEW or something. It was someone who's like, she's only been on Impact as far as like a big show. Otherwise, it's been indies. So it was a brand new person to bring a spotlight to.
Right. So, I mean, her being the champion obviously helps, but realistically, she's the most WWE looking person that they have. Also, is she the best wrestler on the Impact roster? That could be debatable, but I don't see Rosemary or I don't see Jessica Havoc, coming in there. I don't see Jody Threat coming in there and being the representative for TNA in the way that Jordynne Grace would be. They need somebody that could, that looks like she would fit in WWE, which is where Josh Alexander will come in. He's another guy that looks like he could be a WWE guy. And that would be, of course, interesting too. So as much as I love Masha, I think that it's obviously it's up to Jordynne, and if it goes well, then she'll hold the door open for everybody else. So, but I just don't want this thing to end with I won, cut the cord, slam the door, go back to Impact.
That's the end of it. Bing, bang, boom. We had it for 2 weeks and one pay-per-view. So we'll see. I think we're going to have a lot to talk about next week once this Battleground goes down on Sunday. Is for an NXT, this is the most interesting NXT has been in a long time. There's definitely a lot of wild cards going on in NXT
it's intriguing.
right now.
It's intriguing.
Yeah,
for sure.
It definitely is. All right, we got about 15 minutes left here, and it's kind of a quiet news week. So, what, as Cody Rhodes would say, what do you want to talk about?
Pentagon Jr.
So
the rumor is that his contract is up at the end of the summer. Some August possibly, September possibly, and that he will let that contract lapse with AEW. Now, of course, there's 3 ways this is going to go. He resigns, he leaves, he retires. Now, retirement is not an option. So if he leaves, where does he go? What would it take for AEW to win him over? Because honestly, the injuries notwithstanding, Pentagon Jr. is another highly credited, highly touted, vastly underutilized person at the top of the card.
Right.
Never really made it to the top of the card. That's a goddamn shame. So where does Pentagon Jr. fit in if it's not in AEW?
We don't have a Lucha Underground these days.
NXT.
The
crowd will know who he is.
Lucha Underground faction in MLW. They got stuff going on with Lucha.
I forget about them sometimes.
That's a different problem, which is I mean, they could do that, but I don't see MLW. I would hate for him to show up on the main roster and just get put in with another similar ilk faction.
Yeah.
The LWO.
There's already enough going on with that.
With Santos. I mean, like, we're 2 generations removed from the Mexicools, so let's not.
Oh, that's a bad memory.
I'm just saying, let's not forget this is a slippery slope. But I don't know if he stays, and that's kind of the thing. It's not about the money; it's about building your self credibility. And Pentagon should be a big fish in a small pond. That small pond is NXT, especially since we just talked about how the top of their men's single roster isn't as deep as it should be. He comes right in. Mm-hmm. I believe Pentagon, would be a guy that would go get hot shot right to the top of the card. But
more believable than anyone we've seen recently, sure.
Mm-hmm. Right. So I think NXT would be very interesting, to say the least. But now the question is, does he actually do his own promos?
They bring back Ricardo Rodriguez. There you go.
Got to have a mouthpiece in there. So
can they bring Alex Abrahantes with him?
I mean, if the money's right, I think anything's possible.
But no, let's be honest here. Wherever we put Pentagon, if he does indeed let his contract run and he goes, he's already done the TNA Impact dance. Okay, cool. But he did it with his brother. Can he pull a Santana and do it alone and be that single superstar? I don't know. But I honestly think he's the kind of guy, and I hate to label it like this. If you put him in developmental to tutor the younger generation, especially the younger luchadors to work a safer style, so we're not all commanders out there and vikingos. They slow it down a little bit pace-wise, work with them, and it'll be a lot less taxing on his body. And I'm sure he'll probably still make good money as one of those player coaches. I think with the amount of time he's been hurting his body going back to Lucha Underground, AAA, all the stuff in AEW, the indie scene, my guy needs a break. So I feel like doing the Nick Aldis and maybe just going and being a coach over at NXT while wrestling occasionally would be a better use of his talents. Because you could put him in against Trick Williams right now, and I'd believe him a hell of a lot more than Ethan Page. Or you could put him against Obafemi right now, and I'd believe it a whole bunch better than any of the Coffees. So that would be a logical choice for me. Is it going to happen? We don't know. I hope it does, but who's to say Tony doesn't just say, you know what? Take what you want and just stay in the back and don't do nothing. Stay in catering.
I mean, there's probably the easy role to stay there and just keep tagging with Ray Phoenix and just doing that and, just treading water in that position. And hey, that's fine. You can totally do that and just, collect the check and be all good. The NXT idea is intriguing because, like you said, there is a need for some experienced veteran types that could be like challengers for Trick and to continue to polish up Trick Williams. Lord knows, yeah, dude's champ, but he's still very much a developing talent, especially as a singles guy now that he's like in that singles role as the face of the brand. So that is the kind of guy I would want to see Trick against, where it's like, okay, let's keep polishing him up, keep getting him ready for the main roster. And that's not a bad idea.
Nope.
So I don't know. I hadn't thought about the idea of like Pentagon and NXT, but I don't hate it. Huh.
Yeah. I like it. And I like it for, obviously the matchups. Obviously he, gets to be at that level where he could come in, be a big fish and have his day. And then if the situation needs, go to the main roster.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not that he could come in at a level and reach the ceiling. He's kind of going to reach the ceiling in AEW. Unfortunately, that ceiling was a lot lower than we all thought it would be.
Right.
But even if he hits the ceiling in NXT, sooner than later, there's still the main roster awaits him. So it's a good look. I hope that it happens. Now, of course, the question is on the other side, what would Tony Khan have to say or do to retain him? Like,
guaranteed championship run. And he takes the belt to Mexico.
I don't know if that's necessarily it. Is it just about money? Money and schedule, probably?
I think schedule more than money, because like I said before, his body's kind of beat up. But if it's one of those things where Tony lets him take a belt over to Mexico, wins the championship and takes it over to Mexico while he rests, I think that'd be a good business endeavor.
Oh man, I just thought of this. What if Tony keeps him, but the idea is paywall of honor?
Didn't even think about that. Oh
yeah,
God, no.
There's that wild card, man. That they say they need stuff for that darn show that you got to pay for.
Well, so then the question would be is, because then if that were the case, and if it were just about the money and not necessarily the notoriety, then why NXT over literally anything else? Mm-hmm. He could just do it and make an indie run, and because he definitely has the clout to do so in both the U.S. and Mexico and pretty much anywhere in the world that he wanted to go. I don't think there are too many organizations on the indie level that want to tell Pentagon Jr. no. If it was just a matter of we can get you in there and the terms were correct. So I really do think it's about the fact that it's a little bit more than money, and he needs a spot. And I think the NXT would be that spot because of the fact that he doesn't need the indies. It's not going to give him the money that he wants. And with NXT, it's just untested ground. And the rumor is that the WWE is interested anyway, so that helps. But I think it's going to be an interesting next couple, like 2 years for AEW, as we see some of the originals start to drop off, especially considering that, they have enough clout within AEW to just make it on their own in the indies or go to WWE now that they're under new management.
Yeah.
So it's, how the turns are table.
All right. There we go. All right. What else we got? We got a few minutes left here.
Right.
Well, I mentioned in backstage the Dark Side of the Ring, which I thought was canceled, but apparently it's not. I just saw What Killed WCW.
Yeah,
right?
there's like a separate series they're doing. The Who Killed
And it started
WCW.
off with Kevin Nash, who was obviously inebriated, saying, "Do you want the truth or do you want the effing whatever?" And then Bret Hart, with his bitter self, like F WCW, F Eric Bischoff. And I'm like, oh, great. Let me buckle in. And then when I sat there and I watched it, I just felt they just blamed Hulk Hogan. At the end of it all, it was Hulk Hogan's fault and Eric Bischoff's fault. I didn't need an hour documentary to tell me that. Bischoff was messing things up when he signed the outsiders to those contracts where they would always be guaranteed top dollar depending on who came in. And then Hogan having creative control, going back to Starrcade against Sting, saying, not going to work for me, brother. And then that convoluted ending with Nick Patrick, Bret Hart, Sting, and Hogan, and dare I mention WCW Thunder. Yeah, I'd like to admit that I didn't need this hour-long documentary. It was fun just for me to relive some of that stuff going on during the NWO days. But yeah, long story short, kids, if you haven't seen it, spoilers, it was Hogan and Bischoff's fault.
Oh, Damian, let me tell you, it's just getting started. There's 3 more episodes to come. This is a 4-parter. That was just part 1. This is like a separate little, mini series they're doing. So yeah, it's the producers of Dark Side of the Ring in conjunction with the Rock's, company. That's right, they got Dwayne in it. Dwayne's all over it. But yes, this is part 1 of 4 parts. So there's 3 more coming. When this was first announced, I was just like, oh, Lord. I was like, WCW dying has been beaten to death. This is just like the most rehashed topic imaginable. And the one thing that has my attention that I saw so far in the previews and have got me to watch the first episode is that they got in touch with a bunch of people that worked on the Turner side, that were on the corporate side, that we've never really had in these things before. Because usually it's like, it's Nash, it's Diamond Dallas Page, it's Goldberg, it's your usual talking heads that were there, your old WCW guys. They got some of the executives in this. So I'm very curious to see what those folks got to say, because they're going to have a very different perspective of what the hell was going on with that place. That's the one thing that has my attention on this.
Well, who do they have? Like, were they able to find, Yahoo people or Turner people, or?
Yeah, they have Brad Siegel, who was like one of the main people in charge on the, I think he was like the president at the time of like, the Turner WCW side. So they got him, they got some more, they had a few office people that, they got someone who was like in charge of like one of the accounting people. And like, so like, they didn't get, they kind of, they introduced people in this one, but it's really clear that like, this could get really interesting. Or it could be absolute nothing burger and be a rehash of what we already know. But there's definitely people involved where I was like, okay, these are names I've heard in reading about all this, but I've never seen them on camera before. And also, being this is a that's the other key thing. Being this is a non-WWE produced WCW thing, that's kind of the wild card here. They're not beholden to the WWE version of, we ran them out of business because they didn't know what they were doing. This is, we can get a different side of things here. Hopefully.
Correct. I'm looking forward to it, but I don't know, judging by Jamal's face when you said 4 parts, I don't know if it needs 4 parts, because how can you regurgitate a story unless we're going to talk about the finances and the business aspect, the checks kind of thing? Because, they talked about Turner, which was kind of remembrance for me because I remember WCW Saturday night, like I'm sure you guys do, and WCW Worldwide, where I stayed up till like 12:30 on a Saturday when I was a kid to watch it. But the business stuff is what I'm really interested, because they made it seem as if before this documentary that Billionaire Ted's checkbook was unlimited, right? Like Tony Khan money, just writing checks. But that obviously wasn't the case. So I would love to see, aside from Bischoff, aside from Hogan, behind the money scenes, what really was the cost to start bleeding money? Was it that they had to sell to AOL, Time Warner? Because that is intriguing to me. Because if you had a good thing, whatever many weeks they were beating WWF at the time, like 68 weeks, 72 weeks, or what have you.
83 weeks.
That Bischoff keeps milking on every single podcast, just so y'all know. They were doing something right. And it can't just be the NWO. It had to be something with promotion, obviously production, just something made it must-see TV, but something must have gone bad behind the scenes from a money and marketing standpoint, where the networks were like, yeah, we're good. And I'm willing to put money that it started with WCW Thunder, because my God, the game was better than the show, and that's not saying much.
All right, so that's your prediction. WCW Thunder killed WCW.
That's one of them, but I'm willing to see the rest of it just to see. But it did not need 4. It doesn't need 4.
All right, we'll see. Like I said, it's going to be on the rest of the month, so it is what it is.
Yeah. I think it's the perfect storm of all of those things. Incompetence from management, the fact that Yahoo didn't really want wrestling anyway. That was a passion project for Turner. But obviously other things happened that just took it in a different direction. Him selling, and then all of it came together into this nice little meaty soup of suck, and then sold out. 2001 happened.
As
I
I've seen
forgot about that too. Oh God!
I mean, you don't even mention Vince Russo in this whole thing.
Right. Right. So.
Oh my God! As I've seen some people say online, it was death by 1,000 cuts. So,
which is a good way to describe that, because it wasn't one big gaping wound. It was a lot of, and then that was
years and years of things just going off the rails. So we'll see if they end up saying that. They have my attention enough that at least I'll check it out for one more week. But being it's only 4 parts, I'm like, knowing me, I'll probably look at the other 3.
Yeah, I want to know who thought it was a good idea to make Nitro 3 hours with a 10-minute overrun.
Right.
They didn't have silk stockings. That was the problem.
Well, there you go. Oh all right, we are at our hour. Anything else before we wrap this up?
I think the big thing is, of course, AEW's build to Forbidden Door. That'll be interesting because it happens in a couple weeks. TNA is relevant again. God damn them. We will have a nuclear holocaust, and when the aliens pick over our bones, they're going to find a cassette tape, and the only remnants of humanity will be Bound for Glory in 2012 and that damn owl. But
20 years of TNA.
Yeah, I mean,
Here
God.
we are. 20
years. You know what? Kudos to them. Yeah. That the longevity portion is something to be proud of. So kudos to them still being relevant, still putting on a good product. So thank you for that. I think
TNA, is death. They will never die itself, and it will last forever. It will outlive us all. The only way TNA dies is if WWE buys them.
Ooh.
And at this point, there probably isn't much reason to, because we're past the days of like them having a need for tape libraries, because you ain't making DVDs no more, and Peacock ain't worried about that shit at all. Like tape libraries are just like whatever. That window that ship has sailed as far as that goes. All right, folks. Thanks for tuning in. A busy night as always here at Big Gold Belt. So each and every Thursday, 8 p.m., we are here streaming live each and every week. God, we're on Twitch. We're on YouTube. We had people from both of those showing up tonight. We are on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it. Lots of people tuning in tonight. Glad you were here with us, checking out what we are doing. We are also every week streaming at biggoldbelt.com/live. So lots of ways to tune in. And of course, the next day podcast version drops if you're just looking for audio. On social media, it's at Big Gold Belt across the board. So Instagram, X, you name it, at Big Gold Belt. You can find us on there. And of course, biggoldbelt.com, the website, wrestling, movies, comics, and more. Your one-stop shop for everything Big Gold Belt Media. Click that subscribe button if you liked what we heard tonight. We had a good time with y'all. Keeping things busy. We're here each and every week, Thursdays at 8, like I said. Folks, NXT this weekend. We're on the road to Forbidden Door. Lots happening this month, so I'm sure we will have a ton to talk about next week. Come back and join us then. All right, folks. Until then, talk to you later.